All right, today we are diving into something that might sound a little ancient, but what if I told you it holds a key, a powerful, almost technological approach to understanding the most complex system you will ever encounter, your own mind?
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if you could stop just being a user of your own consciousness and instead become the programmer? What if you could actually see the underlying code that runs your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions?
Well, the tool for that comes from this ancient Pali term, Dhammānupassanā. Now, don't let the word throw you off. This isn't about belief or anything like that. It's actually a super precise technical instruction for observing reality on a level that, honestly, most of us never even think about.
Okay, so let's get into it. To really understand what this means, we have to break it down. We're going to deconstruct this word to uncover a really dynamic meaning that's way less about simple mindfulness and a lot more about system analysis.
First up, you've got Dhamma. If you look at its roots, you find Da, which means to hold or support, and Ma, which means to measure or form. So a Dhamma isn't just a teaching. No, it's the fundamental law. It's the smallest possible unit of data that holds a phenomenon together and makes it what it is. Think of it like the source code or the atomic structure of reality itself.
Then we have Anupassana. This is not about passively watching from a distance. Anu means to follow along, and Passana means to see. So put them together, and it means to track in real time. It's this active, continuous observation of a process as it's unfolding, moment by moment.
And when you combine them, you get this incredibly powerful new definition. Dhammānupassanā is the skill of tracking, in real time, the system architecture, the very rules by which things are held together and by which they change. You're not just looking at the anger or the joy. You are literally reading the rule that is processing that data.
So the big question is, how do we actually do this? How do we apply this kind of high-level analysis? Well, thankfully, we're given 4 brilliant metaphors that help shift our perspective from being inside the machine to being able to read the schematics.
First, you can think like a programmer. See, a user just feels the anger and gets totally lost in it. But the programmer, the one practicing Dhammānupassanā, they see the system view. They recognize, okay, the hindrance category of code is executing right now, and its function is to block clarity. All of a sudden, anger isn't some personal failing. It's just a bug in the system that you can actually analyze.
Or how about this one? Think like an architect. A resident walks into a room and just enjoys the way it looks. But the architect sees the blueprint behind the walls, the load-bearing structures where the electrical systems run. This is like seeing the blueprint of your own experiences. You stop getting lost in the surface stuff and start seeing the underlying structure, what caused it, the stress it creates, and the pathways that lead right out of that stress.
Now this next one is really interesting, the chemist metaphor. A regular observer just sees a diamond, but a chemist sees a very specific lattice of carbon atoms, all held together by the fundamental laws of bonding. This is exactly how this practice deconstructs our sense of me. Instead of a solid, single self, you start to see a dynamic system of interacting parts, your thoughts, feelings, perceptions, all just operating according to predictable rules.
And that brings us to the final metaphor, the Go Master. A novice player gets obsessed with saving just one single stone on the board. The master, on the other hand, sees the entire board, the flow of influence, the inevitable chains of cause and effect. This is the ultimate view, right? Where you're no longer caught up in individual little moments, but you see the whole interconnected pattern of reality playing out.
Okay, so this system-level thinking is clearly powerful, but how does it actually work in practice? Let's take something we all deal with, that sudden flash of anger, and run it through this new process.
It really becomes a simple 3-step debugging process. First, you identify the bug. You just acknowledge the raw data. Okay, anger is present. Step 2, you analyze the logic. You map it to the system and realize, this is a classic cause of suffering subroutine. And finally, step 3, you deploy the fix. Because you understand how the system works, you know exactly which conditions to remove to get to Nirodha, which just means the process stops running. You're not fighting the feeling anymore. You're fixing the code that triggers it.
So why does all this matter? I mean, why is this advanced skill, Dhammānupassanā, positioned as the final, most crucial piece of the entire mindfulness framework? What's the ultimate payoff here?
It's because it gets to the absolute core system error that all of our minds run by default. See, we label things, my happiness, my sadness, myself, and then we make a fatal mistake. We expect those labels, those fleeting states, to be solid and permanent.
That expectation, that's the source code of our suffering.
The huge insight that this practice gives you is seeing the truth of the system. All phenomena, every single thought, feeling, and sensation, they're all just like software. They are not solid things. They simply arise when the right conditions are met, and they cease without fail as soon as those conditions are gone. It's an impersonal, logical, and honestly, a deeply liberating truth.
And that leads to the ultimate conclusion here. To understand these fundamental rules is to go from being a pawn in the game to becoming the master of the system. You are no longer just helplessly thrown around by errors and bugs because you can read the code, you understand the logic, and ultimately you gain freedom.
So as we wrap this up, I'll just leave you with a question to take with you. If you could really look at your own mind like a programmer, what is the very first line of your own code that you would want to understand?